very, very unusual film, and I mean that as a compliment. It's very original. One of the boldest decisions, perhaps, which we may discuss, is the withholding of the captions until the end, that we're not told who people are, or even if you don't recognize the films. What was there discussion about that?
Yeah, there was discussion about that, and it was actually my choice to take them off, because the German production was the first one that came out, so it first came out in Germany. It's mainly produced by Germans, and they put the titles in. But I sort of, when I saw it the first time, I thought that it was more interesting actually to discover, because it's not about knowing who the people are. It's about actually listening to what they're saying, and quite often it does change. So it's quite daring to do it. But we always sort of seem to know who everybody is now, because everything is so sort of everything is so known, and it's quite interesting that actually if you don't know something, you hear it in a different way. So you can find out, and you can wait, and you can get rather irritated, but you know that the titles will come up, and perhaps you will then get the idea of who the person was. But anyway, that was my choice, so I dare to defend it.
And you say that was your choice. So in general, because you are the subject, and at one point you're heard say in the film, I didn't know we were going to talk about death here and today. But how much control did you have overall?
It was a film. It was a non-control film in a sense, because we didn't. All I knew is I didn't want to make a classic documentary. I didn't want to have people going up and with them. I didn't want the director to go and find people who knew me, who had worked with me, and ask them who I was and what it was like. And I didn't want their opinions really, because I mean, how do they know? They have a sort of an angle, but that's about it. I thought that in a way you could discover who somebody was just by listening to them, not talking about themselves, not talking about them necessarily even what they do, but just the way they approach different subjects is a way that I thought quite interesting to get to know someone. So you put two people together and just let them talk about something. So the director said, well, we better have a bit of a direction here. So why don't we have chapters, and I'll give you subjects that you will talk about, and then the subjects that you will talk about would then have a connection with the film that I would choose. She did all the choosing, so in terms of how much control I had very little control. I didn't want control. I don't like to have control. I like to feel out of control, actually, most of the time, and then somehow there's something that happens that brings things back into control, but it's usually the director. It's not the actor's role for that, necessarily. I rather like to think that couldn't be the way, and that seems to be how I've worked and led my life.
And there are two things you say, particularly in the film, that struck me, and I wondered if there is a connection between them. One is you talk about your family and how nothing was discussed and everything was kind of damped down emotionally. But then you say, as an actor, you want to be completely exposed and completely open. Is there a connection between those two things, do you think, in terms of why you went into acting?
I don't know, that's all about sort of heavy analysis, I think, all that sort of side. But I think if you're able to understand a little bit about yourself without going into areas which are not necessarily interesting for other people, because they're about finding out why you behave in a certain way. But the end result of how we behave in a certain way is the film that I've given here, and is the roles that I've done. And if they correspond to the way I was brought up, how I felt as a child, etc., then that actually is the normal, I think, thing that we use if we go into the creative world, whatever that is. If we're a painter, writer, pianist, or musician, we're going to use unconsciously all not only the difficulties, but also the joys and the happiness, but also the unresolved difficult things that we all go through, because growing up is very difficult, obviously, and we're being put upon by people that are our parents, we're put upon by school, we're put upon by society. We can't be free human beings because everyone's putting things on us. So the joy of being able to be an artist is that you can actually elbow your way out of all that sort of hemming in and repression that society will put on you, and parents will put you, and family will put on you, and do it your own way, which is what I sort of do.
And you said that the film clips were chosen by the director. In general, do you have any relationship with your previous work? I mean, do you watch it or just try to ignore it?
Yeah, I don't. I sort of try. No, I don't try to ignore it, but it's sort of done. And it's out there. It's for others. It's for everybody who wants to see a film, and I hope that they do, and they do sometimes. That's what I do it for, but it's certainly not for me to think about it and sort of dwell on it and have a look at it. It's like even when monitors came in and you could see, an actor could see immediately what he'd done. It was, for me, terrifying that, because the last thing I think that an actor should do is to look at his own work. It's not about that. It's about actually exposing yourself in a way that you're not aware of what you're doing. You should not be aware of what you're doing if you're an actor. You should be doing it because there's something inside you here that's pumping away, that releases the energy that emotion needs. If you then look at yourself having done that, then you're going to be aware of yourself, and you're going to see your performance somehow inside you, which is not what you should do, I don't think.
The question that actors are always asked, but it is interesting across a long career, is whether you have any sense while making them of the likely or possible reception. I mean, the ones that have endured and taken off and been acclaimed, do you ever have a sense of that?
No, but always when I start a film, I need to get very fired up about the idea of it, very connected with the idea, very close to the director, very full of hope that we're building something, that we're building a story and an idea that will actually communicate and gel and be something. Yes, that. But that's all. It's just. I think you need that passion to keep you going through a film, because it's so difficult, it's so long, and it's so sometimes it's really, really uncomfortable. But it doesn't matter, because you have that passion behind you that you're doing something that really could be special. Quite often it really isn't special at all, but you have believed that it really is special when you're doing it, which is what is important.
And before we open it up to the audience, one of the ways which comes across in the clips chosen in the look is that you are really relatively unusual in acting in both English and French at different times. Do you think in terms of first and second languages, or is it, I mean in acting terms, not conversational terms, or are you equally at ease in both languages?
I am now equally at ease, yeah. It didn't take too long, because I learned French when I was a child, but then I needed really to sort of run with it for quite a few years before it really became almost like my maternal tongue, but not quite. So it's like an adopted branch of me, which is sort of fascinating, because it's like having another music all the time. It's not. I can think in French and English almost simultaneously. It's like it's a huge advantage. I mean, if kids could only learn it when they're young, because I learned it when I was very young, it gives it. I mean, they say that it opens up a creative channel which nothing else does. It's like, and therefore that you can be much more attuned musically or poetically or literally to. So it's yeah. So I've been. It's a big advantage.